Okay, GBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt. And welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals hearings for August 16th to 2022. We have two canceled public hearings this evening. One is Kathy O'Sullivan at 130 South Forest Street in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-28-7-34.1. And the second canceled public hearing we have is 26 South Elroy Drive LLC, 26 South Elroy Drive in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-048-2-38. We have two scheduled public hearings, and I'll read the first one into the record. We have Peter and Ann Joyce at 93 South Euclid, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-49-1-13.3. The applicant is Peter and Ann Joyce. The size and location is 8,200 square feet at 93 South Euclid, Fort Pond Business Section, number 174, lots 18 to 23 in Montauk. The description is to construct an outdoor storage yard with 3 on-site parking spaces, 3 in right-of-way spaces, sidewalk, and additional fencing. The applicant is proposing a garden center use with an associated commercial landscaping use. The relief sought is a variance from 255-1140 parking requirements to allow 7 parking spaces in the right-of-way where on-site parking spaces are required. The zoning district is CB, Central Business, and the Zone X flood zone. Secret class is type 2. Council, do we have affidavit of proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, we have an affidavit of service and posting reflecting that both the mailing and the posting were done on the 2nd day of August 2022, and the paperwork appears to be in order.
Thank you. And, Vice Chair, go ahead.
Yeah. Marco, you can help me with the photos? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This photo shows that the site was properly posted. There's the notice posted in front of the lot that's in the discussion this evening. Next. I turned directly just to show exactly across the street is a lot that a parcel that we ruled on several months ago, and we see construction underway. To give you an idea of the character again of the area and some of what's going on in terms of the changes in this particular part of town. Next. Now I've turned and I've looked west here, and you can get pretty good idea of what Euclid looks like here. We're looking west. This goes all the way down through and crosses Flamingo and works its way down. Next, for Edgemere. I've just where I was standing, looked back. This is the area where we're discussing the 7 parking spaces, basically from that silver vehicle on through to the white vehicle. These are the 7 that are going to be asked for in the right of way. Next. I just turned from that angle slightly back, and you see Pete's potting shed here, which is in common ownership with the parcel that we're discussing. And if was to move forward in any way as a garden center, would be associated with that building. Next. Now I've just turned and look our way up again, up towards Essex Street. We see this comes up. This is a turn that we had we've had 3 parcels come in front of the board recently, all in this area. This will be the 4th application, almost all adjoining one another right here. Next. Oh, I just again, just this idea of this is a little clearer shot. I'm looking, you can see Pete's potting shed, and then as we look off towards where that vegetation is, that's the run there that is being discussed now in this application for these 7 spots. Next. Just to look into the current conditions of the parcel itself that's used currently for storage. And it may have some future usage, but that's not in front of us tonight. Next. That's fine. I'm just looking through it or what I'm trying to capture. But again, that's the parcel looking slightly more towards the east. Next. Then we go around back. There are 3 parking spots being discussed here. Where that truck is in the center of the shot is where these 3 parcels are. I'm going to get a closer shot where these 3 parking spots are. This is all behind the building now. We're on the north side of the lot. Next. A little bit closer here. That wall, the fence to your right of the vehicle is running basically along the top of a retaining wall. The fence to your left is running off on the 90-degree angle of that retaining wall. The retaining wall is part of the discussion associated with this application. Next. This is the nearest, I've just turned from that very same spot and looked slightly to the northwest, and you can see a motel and an associated building just there on the other side of the alleyway, which you'll see on the on both the planting plan, the layout plan, and the survey. Next. And this is the last one, I think. I just turned, this is the alleyway coming in off of Essex. You can see that it's got current usage for access basically into these parcels that we're discussing. And I think that's it. Is that it, Marco? Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Does anybody have any questions for Ed?
I wasn't clear on the 3 parking spaces. Can you show that picture again? It was one of the last ones. Really good photos.
Okay. This here, where that vehicle is parked, it's basically running across those 3 spaces. So if we go all the way to the fence to your right, we'd have a spot, and then basically we'd be parking through that truck on the 3 that show up right now on the proposal from them. And then just here is a little bit of a better idea that they're basically right where that white truck is. And the other area is listed on the drawing as storage area.
Mhm.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you. We have the applicant here, Tara. How are you, Tara?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Tara Burke here from Lighthouse Land Planning on behalf of Peter and Ann Joyce. Thank you for that synopsis and the great photos. It's really helpful.
You're not an attorney, so we'll swear you in, right? Or
Sure, yeah.
You swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as noted, this application is currently in front of you and the planning board and the architectural review board for site plan approval for a garden center use. As was noted, Pete's potting shed is next door. This is going to be the outdoor horticultural area in the front, and in the rear, as was noted, on the other side of the existing retaining wall and fence, they're on site 3 parking spaces for some of the commercial vehicles. The garden center use bases its parking calculation on square footage of retail space. Now, what's interesting about this one is there is no retail space. However, thank you, Marco. We felt that because we all know that there's a shortage of parking in downtown Montauk, we might as well maximize and offer as many spaces as we possibly can in the right of way, which would line up with how site plans were approved in the rest of downtown Montauk historically. So we could fit 7 spaces in the right of way, which is why we chose that number, 1 ADA space and the 6 standard parking spaces with, like I said, the other 3 here in the rear on the property. So what's in front of you is the parking variance to allow the 7 spaces in the right of way. We can fit them on site, as is the typical design, to show that you can fit them on site, pull them off site, and then hopefully be, granted the variance to improve them. We had a memo from the town's consulting engineer dated November 4th, 2021, where he said that the plans show the width of the existing road and the right-of-way, and they illustrate the minimum 12-foot travel lanes on both sides, and deemed the width of the road and the parking spaces in conjunction with the parking on the other side of the street as acceptable and safe. We have a memo from the fire marshal from January 12th of 2022, signing off on the design and the ADA space as well as the lining up of the sidewalks. And then we have the memo from the planning board dated March 3rd, 2022, to the zoning board of appeals that they were in favor of granting the variances for the parking spaces. And I just wanted to note, I know you're very familiar with this area, right? The South Essex corner site plan was just granted their parking variances on the neighboring lot to the east. And then I had Beckman, which is across from that one in front of you. That was probably 2017, although they're still working on the building permits. And then what was shown in the photos, the lot directly across the street, there was a Home Team 668 on the other side of Pete's Potting Shed. And then there was Kazura, which is on the other side of the street, and then Franzone, Blue Sea of Montauk. Those are all south of the highway, Aaron Speed Surf Shop. So I think this design is similar to what you may have seen previously. And that's really all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
I would have a question about that parking at the rear, those 3 spots are going to be winding up parking just about against the retaining wall.
Mm-hmm.
The retaining wall, we did not examine. Do you have an engineer's report on
We
that?
do. It's in the planning board file, and it was deemed acceptable by the town's consulting engineer.
Mhm.
There was, just because that's in front of the planning board, that's not necessarily for a variance, which is why it wasn't submitted to your file. But we'd be happy to, give that to your file if you want it. But Vinnie Gaudiello did sign off on the structural integrity of it. We also have curb stops and bollards in between the retaining wall and the fence and the parking spaces.
And the drainage in that area as well was sized and approved by
Yep.
the engineer.
Vinnie Gaudiello signed off on the drainage design as well. And that's all in the planning board's file, which I'm happy to submit to your file.
Anybody else? Terry?
Well, I will never understand. If you could fit the spaces on site, why are you proposing 7 of them in the right of way?
Because then they would take up the horticultural storage area, and because the lots in downtown Montauk are rather small and we're limited in our commercial properties in Montauk, we like to maximize the use on site. So the planning board has historically said, if you can fit it on site, we're in favor of asking the zoning board to grant the variances rather than making you pay fees in lieu of parking at $15,000 a space.
So it's not a concern about a lack of parking spaces, it's a lack of the business space then.
Yes,
So-
exactly. Yeah. Because the lots are small. Typically, when you put a building on a lot in downtown Montauk, in order to make the building viable, it has to be of a certain size. Then that retail space is one parking space per 180 square feet, which all of a sudden you can't fit that on your site, right? So that's the typical design. Here's a little different because it's an outdoor horticulture storage area, but it is in conjunction with a pre-existing garden center next door. So.
This nose-in parking is taking place on the whole area up and around the corner on all of these parcels, which as we inherit the approvals of other people on this and the planning department. When you're on the site, logistically, nonetheless, it's a little troubling because you can see how narrow a space is going to be left to pass through. Now, I understand, I read the TAM, and I understand that we have the full 12 feet at the narrowest point. We have 12.7 feet, I think. So it's legal. Nonetheless, it's always a little bothersome when you're there to realize the kind of congestion we're creating. Some of that goes beyond our purview, obviously, and we're not here to redo the planning. But it is one of those things on every one of these parcels that we've looked at and been concerned about. And I don't know what we can do about it, nothing. But nonetheless, I've got to say, stand there, saw those cars parked in there when that walkway goes through, the tail end of an average size pickup truck, not even a big truck, will be sticking very much on the edge of the road. So it is a concern in terms of overall layout. However, this all feeds back into the master plan for the village and what
Correct.
people are and what the highway department is approving and what we're getting back from the planning department. But it is the thing that gives you pause when you're on the site.
So right now, Tara, the makeshift parking that is there.
That's been there
How
since
much, now this
1984.
is in the town, it says they're gonna line up with the Pete's Potting Shed sidewalk. How far out toward the street is that moving the spaces? Did it say that here?
I don't know offhand, but what I can tell you is the planning board looked at the dimensions with the consulting engineer at length because of these concerns. What we're left with, which is a little tricky on this property because the one next door was historically developed and then the one on the corner was just approved, is if you look here, you can see this is the sidewalk for Pete's Potting Shed, which comes out a little bit further, right? So the existing parking spaces are actually further out. We pulled it back and then had to jog the sidewalk to get the parking up as far in as possible. And then down here, because of this lot being on the corner, we had to jog it back again. So we were left trying to make sense of sidewalks that didn't line up. So we tried to kind of meet it in the middle and do a little bit of diagonal on either side. And so I know that doesn't directly answer your question.
But according to the engineer and the planning department, the math works.
The math works, yeah.
Okay.
And offsetting the sidewalk does help in this condition.
Yeah.
What's going on directly in front of Pete's Potting Shed now is there really are not head-in parking spaces for anything other than a very small vehicle because the sidewalk does take away from any potential to get a vehicle in there, anything other than a very small mini.
I mean, hopefully with the approval of South Essex Corner, when vehicles are coming, from the skate park towards town and they're turning onto South Euclid, South Essex Corner is going to have parking there before they get to our parking, right? So hopefully that will, help the situation, at least for our spaces.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marco?
Good evening, members of the ZBA. To swear me in?
Yeah, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me tonight. My name is Marco from the planning department. I work with the planning board applications for the most part. I am here before you today because this application involves multiple not multiple, just parking variances for the 7 spaces in the right of way. Tara has summed up most of the main points of this application and what's for and the general history of it. So as far as the use of the site, as you might notice, there's no principal building on there. It's a garden center use, and in the town code, there is a definition for what a garden center use is. There's, as long as it can consist of more than one parcel, so long as the parcel that contains the horticultural area as it's depicted here, where the sales are going, as long as the building associated with that business is within 500 feet of the of that parcel. So as we know, the Pete's Potting Shed is right next door, so it's right next door to that area where they're storing the horticultural area. They can have a associated landscaping business with it as well. That's something that has been allowed by the planning board in recent history. As far as the review that the planning board has had, it has been through the planning board process in their work session meetings. I think the 3rd time they had the 3rd review, in which after that review, they sent their comments to the ZBA. 6 of the 7 members were in favor of the parking spaces in the right of way, and 1 member was absent. As Tara did mention before, the planning board had extensively asked the applicant and the consulting engineer to carefully review the site in regards to the amount of space available for the cars coming in and out, drainage, and as well as the structural integrity of the retaining wall that's illustrated there. That has been reviewed by the consulting engineer, of which we have his letters that state that he found it satisfactory. There is going to be a public easement, access easement going to be required for the 4-foot sidewalk since it's located off the property line. And overall, those are the main points. If you have any other questions, please let me know.
Yeah, we had talked earlier about, I think, the property as it stands does not have a C of O, correct?
I believe so. Going through so a little bit more history of it. There was a site plan in 1981 for this site, in which a garden center use was not defined in the town code yet. At that time, the applicant went to ZBA to seek approval to allow that garden center use that wasn't defined in the town code yet to be permitted there on that parcel. The ZBA at that time found that to be acceptable, and they had with it an associated plan that illustrated, parking spaces and other uses on the site of how it's supposed to be operating. After that approval was issued for the ZBA, and I also for the planning board side of it with the site plan, I don't believe any CO was issued after that in relation to those applications. That said, the site has continued to operate using not out of line with the application that was approved. They just didn't seek a CO for it. So at the moment, if you read the building card's history, it wouldn't be very obvious to you to see how it's linked to the next door parcel, which the planning department has noted in their planning board reviews, for their reviews to the planning board, and we'll make that detail more explicit in the resolutions going
And
forward.
regardless, they're going through site plan approval now.
Yep.
And I'm sure there'll be a certificate of occupancy when they do the improvements.
The applicant should seek one, yes, because that's part of the time constraints, yeah.
Thank you.
And this parcel, if it were to move forward, has to be associated with the building, with Pete Potting Shed?
Yeah, the use, given the fact that this property is associated with the retail business next door, they're somewhat linked together in that respect, yeah.
Can they be sold separately?
I don't think so. That's probably something you can ask the applicant, but I would imagine that whatever business is operating on the next door site, it should be in relation to the Pete's Potting Shed where the actual store is when the retail sales are happening.
In the definition of the use of a landscape center, it did say that it had to be in association with the building. It's in the TAM. It's something you set up along. with.
Yes, yeah,
So that in the future, when the question was asked, could it be sold separately? If it was, it could no longer be a retail garden center unless it was still associated with the neighboring building
And vice versa.
and vice versa.
Right.
According to what we read, what you've sent out in the new definition, it was not in 1981, but is now, so that any future retail use there will have to associate, if it's a landscape center, it can't stand independently on its own, separate ownership, is what I'm saying. That's what was asked.
I believe so. Sorry, I couldn't really get my head around
Okay,
it.
well, I'm just saying, if that parcel was to be sold and somebody wanted to do a retail center there, they have to have an associated retail business there, so that it could not operate on its own. I'm asking as much as telling. It said that in the TAM, that was the indication in the TAM.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. Anybody, one more questions from Marco?
You mentioned a public access easement. I was just wondering if you could point that out.
So where the sidewalk is, I guess I'll zoom in a little bit further. So that sidewalk is located off the property line.
I see. I got it.
So the public access easement should cover that pathway there.
Got it.
Further questions?
I'm good. No.
Thank you, Marco. And I just want to point out that Marco's going to be leaving us on the town. Marco, thank you for your service to this town. We appreciate all the work you did, and we wish you luck in the future.
Thank you so much. You've been
Thank you,
great to
Marco.
work with, and
Thank you.
I appreciate you for listening to me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Terry, you have any closing? Good. Anybody in the public, Matt?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Want to close this out?
I will. Then in the application of Peter and Ann Joyce, 93 South Euclid, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-049-01-13.3. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing and the public record at this time.
I'll second that.
I concur. Concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Our next scheduled public hearing is James Walsh at 239 East Lake Drive in Montauk. Suffolk Tax Map number 300-13-3-32. The applicant is James Walsh. Size and location is 33,383 square feet at 239 East Lake Drive in Montauk. The description is to construct a 608 square foot swimming pool, pool fence, pool equipment, a 1,185 square foot pool patio, a 64 square foot spa, an outdoor shower on a parcel of land containing tidal wetlands and a bluff. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 and any other relief necessary from East Hampton Town Code. The zoning district is A residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Who's handling this?
I got this.
Okay, Terry?
Okay, this is the official notice and posting, and you can see the big address sign that they have there in front.
Would you like to know if there's an affidavit of service?
I don't know. Chair, would you like to know if there's an affidavit?
Oh,
Okay.
Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
We do.
Thank you.
It is an affidavit of service and posting from Joel Halsey.
Make sure- Don't forget to
Stating-
swear in Joel either.
Stating that both the posting and the mailing were done on the 3rd of August, 2022, and the paperwork does appear to be in order.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council.
No problem.
All
We'll
right.
sneak it in there.
All right. So we saw the first photo with the official notice of posting, verify the affidavit. Now this is a shot just up East Lake Drive toward south to north. Next, this is a shot of the neighbor immediately across the street from the applicant's home. Next, this is a shot north to south on East Lake Drive, give you a feel for the area. You're probably all familiar with it. Next. And now I'm standing across the street from the applicant's home. You can see the notice and you can see the home down the driveway, and we're going to be going into that. Next. I did take a photo of this gate because it's a lot taller than I am, so I don't know if this required anything from the ARB or not, so I took a photo of it. The next is a shot on across the gravel drive, and you can see where there were native plants, there bayberry in there and some switchgrass and things. Next, it's just another view down the northern property line of the home. Now we're going to go into the back where the pool and the hot tub is proposed. Next. Now standing at the northern edge of the property, and this is in the direction where the two-story decking is. You can see that. Next, we're going to walk a little farther out. Now this is a view of the area from the northern portion also. Where the table is roughly where the hot tub is slated to go, and the cornhole area is around where the pool will be started and laid out. Next. That's just a closer view of that area that you can see. Next. This is the 4-foot walkway that leads down to the water, and there is an existing scenic easement as was stated in the notice. Next. And that's just another area, the seating area on the far side toward the south end of the property. And next. This is the rock, stone walkway that starts leading down to the shoreline. It was a little scary, actually. I did not go down all the way to the shore. Next. Not sure what I took there. That might have been an accident. Next.
Scenic easement?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, it looks more like the south part.
I think that's the last photo.
That's the last photo, okay. Oh, all right.
Thank
There's
you.
another one.
Any questions for? Thank you. Joel? Announce yourself.
Joel Halsey. I'm actually here for James Walsh. He couldn't be here tonight. Him and his family went on vacation for the week. Lucky him for the timing here. So he asked me to step in for him. I've been helping him kind of through the application process to try to get the pool. If you'd like to swear me in, I'll
Yes.
be.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Joel Halsey again, here representing James Walsh for his property. I helped James from the beginning when he was initially purchasing the property. One of his major concerns was the clearing, as you can see in that picture. It was my recommendation to him. Prior to him purchasing this property, it had been a rental property for a long time. And the property owner was a non-existent property owner, so he would just rent, did not really pay attention to what was going on. And it turns out the renters had kind of carte blanche with the property. Prior to him purchasing it, he was very concerned about the clearing that you see in that picture. And I told him once he purchases it, he should, obviously, you all know James Walsh, you've seen his surveys. I said he should probably go out and stake the line that was on the approved line for the original residence that was approved, and just stop mowing. And that's exactly pretty much what he did. And as you can see, that's the result of what is there today. Then he just, he decided he wanted to design a pool for the property. He is a local, he's small children, and he just kind of wants to, he's been working hard in this town for a long time, and he's finally got his dream home, and he'd like to have a pool at his dream home. So we helped him design a pool. The pool is in a conforming location. It is 110 feet from the tidal wetlands of Lake Montauk. And in fact, the pool was brought in front of this board to go administratively by the planning department, but it was denied to go administratively for the reason I'm not quite sure of. I did see that hearing, but it wasn't really, they didn't feel that because the pool was being designed on Lake Montauk, it was pretty much why they didn't want to, the board, you guys did not want to review it to go administratively. So I am here today to hopefully answer any questions and alleviate any concerns that could be brought up with regards to this pool being located 110 feet from the tidal wetlands of Lake Montauk. There is adequate access to install this pool. There is an existing scenic easement on this property. The property now conforms to all clearing regulations, all coverage regulations, and no variances are required for this pool. Beyond that, if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Joe, the wire pool fence, is that going to be 4 feet?
The pool fence would be a code compliant pool fence. And, or does the survey not have a pool fence on it?
It shows a proposed pool fence. I don't see the height.
Okay, well, it would have to be, it's going to have to be, if it's not code compliant, the building department's not going to issue a CO.
Right. Okay, but all right, it won't be higher. Well,
Oh, no,
It's
well, it could be higher, it could be up to 6 foot. But I don't think he's going to want a 6 foot high.
It could be anywhere, it's minimum of 4, it can be maximum.
okay, so the gate in the front, that's at least 6, that does not need ARB?
Driveway gate,
I
that's
don't know.
different. Yeah, that's
The
not, that wouldn't be part of the
the-
pool enclosure.
The thing with Lake Montauk is you do have a rear yard in the front yard. East Lake Drive is a rear yard. The lakeside is the front yard. Pools and fences can be up to 6 feet in the rear and side yard, but I'd confirm that with the ARB as to whether the fence. I don't know the height of the fence. I'm not here to discuss. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I will discuss the fence. It was kind of new. That fence looks actually relatively new. I don't remember seeing it, but again, I'll have to ask James about that regarding the installation of the fence.
Okay.
So then, he's brought the clearing in to HPOD.
Well, correct. He's brought it to, it's allowed 10,000 square feet. The existing clearing is 9,895 square feet. And I believe that is the clearing that was approved for the ZBA application that allowed the residents to be built.
Do you have the number of what the clearing was?
I don't have that on me right now.
Oh, okay.
I think that's maybe referenced in the technical analysis memo, though.
Yeah, it's okay. I didn't notice it in there.
Was the scenic easement always there and it just had been over cleared?
The property was originally a rental, well, it was originally a residential property.
Mhm.
The homeowner decided to start renting it, had been renting it for years.
Mhm.
The renters decided that they wanted more lawn. The property owner at the time, not James Walsh, but the property owner
Right,
at the time didn't realize that this was going on. And when they put the house up for sale, they realized that they had this big violation on their property. I mean, I can't guarantee that they didn't know about it,
Mhm.
but it was done by renters and not the property owner. Then I doesn't, yeah, I could say that till I'm blue in the face. And, I don't know if that's the honest truth of the story, but that's what I've been told.
Okay.
But it wasn't James. James only recently bought the property, and he did the right thing once he bought it and brought it to clearing compliance.
So the area that's been allowed to grow back in, I was over on the site, it's nicely done that it's grown back in. But that's going to remain that way.
That will remain that way.
And is that beyond where the scenic easement's been
That
approved?
is approximately 20 to 30 feet beyond the scenic easement, but all within variance, natural resource special permit and variance jurisdiction.
Right, so the statistics, the numbers you gave us about the maximum clearing on the site reflects what we're seeing on the site right now.
Correct. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no. Okay, it is James. Okay, James Walsh survey, December 23rd, 2020.
I'm sorry.
I was just checking the survey.
Oh,
James
okay.
Walsh, 2021.
Any other questions for
Okay.
Joel?
No.
Great, thank you. Anybody? Ryan?
Oh, God, you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, Brian Frank from the Planning Department.
Brian, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
There aren't too many other background details that I think I need to fill in. The property was vacant until the early 2000s. Member McGivern, the scenic easement was established after a 2003 zoning board determination that authorized the approval of the construction of the residence. That's was the impetus for the scenic easement. As Joel had pointed out, the structures meet the town code wetland setback. The property has been brought into compliance with the clearing restrictions. If you take a look at the survey, you'll see that it's 2 feet above the groundwater table. That's a requirement for the Hampton Protection Overlay District. HPOD also requires a chlorine reducing sanitation method, and all swimming pools in town are supposed to discharge their discharge water into a dry well and not overland. So that's about all I can supplement the discussion with, unless anybody has any questions that I can answer.
I'm wondering about the native vegetation that's been regrown on the spot that's, come in from what we saw, the aerial photos showed us that there's lawn there. That was not planted by Mr. Walsh. That grew in on its own.
I had a hard time just from Eleni's photographs identifying exactly what was there. I'm sure you have a better sense from physically being on the property.
Yeah, it looks
I
like
haven't been there.
it grew in, basically, it looks like it grew in on its own. If you stop mowing, this is what would happen, and it's all about the same size, and it's all very similar in terms of the material that's there. I'm just wondering if there's any recommendations about how that, I know it's a scenic easement. Are we looking to have them do any planting? Are we happy with what you see there when you look at this?
If it's clear and compliant, and that's and more importantly these days is leaving it intact. And I think with this owner who works with clearing issues all the time on the properties, his surveys, I know you shouldn't judge properties based on the owner and the permits run with the land, but I think it's safe to speculate that there's less likely to be overclearing on this property with this owner than some of the more common situations, you know, what Joel described in terms of having tenants use the property on a regular basis. Everybody comes here from somewhere else, not necessarily aware of what's required by law or what's best management practice for good stewardship of sensitive environmental resources. They're on vacation, they're using the property with their uses in mind. And having a year-round resident reduces that often. Having somebody who does, I don't know, I certainly dozens, maybe hundreds of clearing surveys per year certainly helps as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody questions for Brian? I think that was the shortest presentation you've ever given us, Brian.
I'm not going to answer it.
Thank you. Anybody from the public? Matt?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Terry, would you like to make a motion?
Yes. In the application for James Walsh at 239 East Lake Drive in Montauk, tax map 300-013-03-32. Make a motion to close the public hearing and the public record.
I'll second that.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. We're going to then segue into our work session for the evening. As a benefit to Joel, who is here, we're going to move up the Lawrence Chaffis discussion up the schedule and hold it now so that he can be here for that. It's already read into the record from last week. Do I still need to read it into the record, or maybe I should do it just?
I would do it just for the sake of the record and for Laura's sanity.
So I'll read it back into the record. The applicant is Lawrence Chaffetz at 56 Osprey Road in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-131-7-2. Size and location is 7,552 square foot at 56 Osprey Road in Montauk on the Sea, Section 1, Lot 113, map number 2438, Montauk. The description is to construct a 180 square foot gross floor area dormer additions, allow 150 square foot of decking, 2 sheds totaling 75 square foot, 56 square foot spa hot tub, walkways, and outdoor shower to remain, and to install a new IA sanitary system within side and rear yard setbacks outside of the town's pyramid regulations at the 3rd story and on a parcel of land containing beach vegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and 5 variances are required for this application. 1 variance of 8 foot 8.5 feet is required from 255-1172D of the Town Code in order to construct the proposed dormer addition 8 foot 8.5 feet outside of the town's pyramid regulations along the eastern lot line. 1 variance of 2 foot is required from 255-11-10 of the Town Code in order to allow the existing shed to remain 8 feet from the western side yard lot line where 10-foot setback is required. 2 variances of 8 foot and 6 foot are required from 255-11-10 of the Town Code in order to allow the existing hot tub to remain 12 foot and 14 feet from the western side yard lot line where 20-foot setbacks are required respectively. 1 variance from 255-11-10 of the Town Code is required to construct 3rd-story additions where 2.5 stories is the maximum permitted and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence, AE flood zone, elevation 10, and the secret class is type 2. Now, last week, there was a discussion that commenced by the three board members that were present. I was not present. And so we're going to be continuing the discussion this evening. Member Joan, do you want to weigh in on this, or are you prepared to?
I thought you were going to weigh in first.
I need you to weigh in first.
I'd be more than happy to weigh in first.
The only is a 2-2 split,
Okay.
so I need you to weigh in.
So I reviewed the discussion from last week. And I'll say that I do agree with Vice Chair and Ms. Berger's assessment of the application. I too was present with both of them, with the first one and the second one, the revised one. My main concern with the original one was the size of the dormers and piercing the pyramid zone, and I had a problem with that as well. I think the redesign, the pulling back of the dormers, eliminating the western pyramid variance with the eastern, and if you take a look at the eastern, as was mentioned by Vice Chair, that house is pretty looming on that side. So I think the impact to the neighborhood is small. I do agree with the other variances for the tub and sheds. And for the septic system, I think the septic system is an environmental improvement on the property. So I would also vote to approve this application.
You're prepared?
So we
You wanna
done?
weigh in?
You want to weigh in?
I'm prepared, but I don't think I need to.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
good. So you have a 3-1 vote. No one's changing their vote? Everybody good?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oops.
Give me a second. All right, next, we're going to discuss David Wagner at 237 Kings Point Road at Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-24-1-32. The size and location is 29,643 square foot at 237 Kings Point Road and contiguous to the waters of Gardiner's Bay. Clearwater Beach, map 2715, lot 21 in Springs. The description is the restoration of an eroded coastal bluff by removing farm materials, place and grade approximately 250 cubic yards of clean sand, stabilized with core logs and erosion matting, and plant with beach grass on a parcel of land containing coastal bluffs, beaches, and tidal wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code. The zoning district is B residence. Zone X, flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. I believe this is in member Denise's
Yes, it is.
zone. So Denise, you want to carry?
Look at this. This public hearing was held on July 12th, 2022. The project before us is restoration of an eroded coastal bluff by removing farm materials, place and grade approximately 250 cubic yards of clean sand stabilized with core logs and erosion matting and plant with beach grass on a parcel which contains coastal bluffs, beaches, and tidal wetlands.
a natural resource permit is the relief being requested. Drew Bennett was the original engineer associated with this project, but it is now being represented by the offices of InterScience and James Walker, the principal planner. The survey we are working from is last revised January 21st, 2013. The restoration design consists of the placement of 250 yards of clean fill seaward of the existing slope. The slope of the proposed material is proposed to be more gradual in the western portion of the property, where the erosion is more conspicuous than in the eastern portion of the property. Several rows of coconut fiber core logs are proposed to help anchor the fill. The fill is proposed to extend seaward to an elevation of 6.25 above sea level, which according to the technical analysis memo is the approximate toe of the bluff location prior to Superstorm Sandy. The technical analysis memo also recommended removal of all boulders from the shoreline. There was an area of debris at the toe of the bluff, which I had great concern over, and it has since been removed. There is a letter of support in the file from Paul and Florence Libin, who have lived at 243 Kings Point Road since 1971. Brian Frank, Chief Environmental Analyst, spoke on behalf of the Planning Department. He was in favor of jute matting, which was a discussion during the hearing. Expressed concern about the success of a planting plan in the fall, noting the department has noted through observation that the best time for planting is in the spring. Was concerned about the potential for core logs to become dislodged during storm events. Mr. Walker agreed to work with the Planning Department and agreed to submit revised plans regarding the implementation of the restoration and the plantings. Mr. Wagner addressed the board, noting that the house was bought in 1990. At that time, there was no sign of erosion. 2 years later, after the Halloween storm, the properties to the left of his property were devastated by the storm, and the 3 properties applied for bulkheads. He was going to submit an application as well, but decided not to since his property did not sustain any erosion. So he withdrew his application. He testified that once the neighboring bulkheads were built, he had countless encounters with erosion. Also noted that every northeaster, his property lost more and more property. Superstorm Sandy wiped out 18 feet of his property. He noted to the board, bulkheads affect the last property in line, so his property is going to have an ongoing problem. Further noting those neighboring bulkheads are causing erosion on his property. Ginny Schmidt, 235 Kings Point Road, neighbor, spoke in favor of the application for approval by this board. The record was left open for InterScience to submit revised plans, and on July 20th, 2022, cross-section drawings for this property and a planting plan were submitted. In that letter received from James Walker, he notes that there were several alternatives, but after considerable and careful consideration, the sections also depicted 20-inch biologs anchored by 6-foot, 2-inch by 2-inch stake driven into the ground at light angles and tied to each other with a biodegradable cord. He notes this technique has been used on other sites with success. He addressed if the biologs become dislodged or fail for any reason, the individual biolog can be replaced. He also submitted a planting plan and noted that the property owner has been advised that the lowest elevations of the living shoreline bluff restoration may need sand added from time to time, and that the slope is exposed at this time and restoration is recommended for by September 1st. I am in favor of this application. I'm skeptical about the timing of the project. The house is not in jeopardy. The ZBA permit is good for 3 years. So I'm more in favor of the work beginning in the spring. But we have had these reassurances from Mr. Walker that implementing the project in September will be successful. So I would like to discuss that one issue I have with the board and see how you all feel. So for these reasons, I am in favor of approving a natural resource special permit to section 255-420 of the Town of Code. I'm just questioning when to start this. Like, is waiting till the spring a better option? Or do we just go with the experience of Mr. Walker, who seems to think this will be successful?
Well, he's got 2 weeks to get a permit. We're just making a decision tonight, which isn't going to get written and adopted until a week. So he's got 1 week to pull a permit,
So if we,
essentially.
could we condition this work being implemented in the spring, since the house really is not in jeopardy?
I think you can. I mean, that's a discussion.
Right, I don't know. I mean, I mean, thank you for that detailed synopsis and all. I mean, I'm in agreement also, I think, as far as approving the project. As far as when, I know Brian Frank feels that it would be better in the spring for the root systems to take hold over the summer. But Mr. Walker also seems to have the experience. I'm fine with him doing it as whenever they like, and not really conditioning it on waiting for the spring. I guess if it doesn't work out over the winter, they would have to replant, I imagine, in the spring. I don't
Well,
feel
I might have
strongly
something
about
to add to that
timeframe
too.
for that.
Maybe we'll-
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe we'll go to Ed and find out what your
Yeah,
opinion, and I might have some additional.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the presentation made by Member Savarese. I think it was very complete. I think she covered the bases, and there's not a lot of reason to go over a good many other aspects. One of the questions I had coming into tonight's hearing was whether or not the debris that was an issue at the time of the meeting had been cleared up, and she did answer that this evening, saying that it has been cleaned. That was a condition of us moving forward the night we had the hearing. I thought that the presentation at the time from both the representative and from Mr. Walker was impressive enough to make me think that in conjunction with the work that's been done on either side of this property, that this was not only a good project, but probably a very necessary one in terms of the preservation of that particular parcel. It seems as if, as he was mentioned, that he did not move forward when others did, but then suffered the damage that was, collateral damage from the storms, that he became a little bit of a victim of others' work. And I think that the way in which the project was presented, I think the way in which it was analyzed, and I think that the attitude of our own planning department was that this was basically a very good project, and we could see it move forward. The question of the coil logs came up, and that's a two-sided thing. Walker felt very strongly that he could anchor those, and they're important for withstanding that, especially that first winter's surge and those things that might take the tow out from there. On the other hand, if they dislodge, they take quite a bit with them. I'm in favor of improving the application, but in the two questions, one about the coil logs and the other about the timing, I guess I'm willing to say that I will stand by the analysis of Mr. Walker and his techniques, and I'm not bothered by the idea of either using the coil logs based on his feeling that he can anchor them successfully and they will help protect the site for the winter. I do think it's dicier deciding whether or not planting in the fall makes a lot of sense, but certainly it's their toss-up. If they do that and they lose it, they'll be replanting again in the spring. So I'm in favor of the application. I think that it was a good application. I think it was a good presentation. I think these questions that were raised by Member Savarese were good ones, and I think that us weighing in on them is important. But I'm basically going to yield to the expertise of the people who are going to be doing the work on this site. So I'm in favor of it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I also, one of the things I enjoyed was the commentary both from InterScience and Brian as well, that they had their own opinions and didn't necessarily agree, but there was a good consensus that, either would work. And it was just good to hear those two opinions, and for my sake. I know that InterScience didn't necessarily believe in the control matting, but we are using the control matting. The one thing that I think is important here too is the woody shrubs that are going to be on the top of on the bluff. In terms of timing, I think it was a consensus of both that, unless this thing started in the beginning of September, well, Brian didn't agree with that. He'd rather see it in the spring, which I agree with too. But if it were to start, it would need to start in the beginning of September. I think it's doubtful that they'll be able to pull a permit in time for that. So at this point, I would say, let's. I don't know if we want to make it contingent, but if it doesn't start in September, it's got to start in April. I don't think it should start later than that.
Well, I think it takes, I know it can take 4 to 6 weeks to get a building permit.
Oh, I know, and they're not going to be able to pull it.
So you're really talking about possibly November.
Mid-October at the
Okay.
minimum.
End of October.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, it's a-
anyway, for the purposes of this tonight, I say we approve it. And most likely, I don't know if we have to make it contingent on the spring, just let the system run, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they plant in the fall and everything is lost,
They would have to.
they would have to
re-
replant in the spring anyway.
That's correct.
I'm fine
So
with leaving it whenever they can get it done.
maybe our condition would be that if they do it in the fall and it does
Yes,
fail, it has to be rectified in the spring.
absolutely.
That's maybe the condition that we put
Mhm.
on it. Is that agreeable?
That's very agreeable to me.
So in other words, if they get the permit and they try in the fall and it fails,
Yes.
they
Right.
have to then replant in spring
That's correct.
as a condition.
Yes.
If
And
they
even
don't get to it in the
and
fall,
even
you
replenish
still
it.
want them to get it to the.
Correct.
That's
spring.
correct.
Either way, yeah.
Yeah.
Either way. So in other words, the planting has to be done in
Yes.
one way or another
By the spring.
by spring.
Yes.
I think you can live with that. Yeah.
But it's very unlikely that if they're not getting going till November, that they will go forward with planting.
I mean, look, if something happens, life happens, right? If something happens, I'm sure they can reach out to us and tell us
Mhm.
what's going on, in which case we can, seek to amend or modify or give them more time.
I don't
Mhm.
think this is starting in the fall.
No,
anyway, so.
neither do I. Just based on the process and how long it takes
Yeah.
to get it.
And our determination is giving them 3 years, right?
The
Right.
determination gives them 3 years, but I think what you're asking for is that, you're willing to say you can start as early as the fall against the advice of the planning department.
Mhm.
However, if you do that, you have to replant in the spring if it fails.
Should
Right.
fail,
Yeah.
yes. I think that's a
I
good,
don't think that's a big ask.
no.
No.
I'm sure
But-
we can work with that language in the conditions. Yeah.
The diagram that InterScience submitted is a telltale too of where the bluff was in 2011
Mhm.
relative where it's going to be now.
Right.
It's a pretty good diagram.
Okay. So that's
good.
a universal across the board. Yes. Okay. Great.
Yes. Thank you.
Next, we have Terrence O'Connell at 9 Madison Drive in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-68-2-14.1. The size and location is 10,000 square foot at 9 Madison Drive, Montauk Beach, Hither Hills, 2, map number 1315 in Montauk. The description is to allow a roughly 232 square foot wood deck and roof overhang pergola and first and second story wood decking to remain within front yard setbacks. Relief sought is one variance of 9.3 feet from 255-1110. is required to allow existing decking with roof overhang and pergola to remain 10'7" from the front yard lot line where 20-foot is required and any other relief necessary from East Hampton Town Code. The zoning district is B residence, Zone X flood zone, and the seizure class is type 2. Who handled this one?
I had this one.
Terry, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Okay, so this hearing was on July 26th of 2022. Andy Hammer was the agent. He said that night that he was actually covering for the applicant Terrence O'Connor, who was not able to attend the hearing. The plans that we had for this, J. Pontieri plans dated 3/12/2021. And the survey is from 3/24/2022, a Gary Benz survey. This has a long tale of history on this property. This house, going way back to 1979, was originally moved from another location in Ditch Plains. When that house was moved, at the time that it was in Ditch Plains, there was no front porch or anything. It was just the main structure itself. When it was moved here to 9 Madison Drive, there was an error that occurred in the marking of the property, and the foundation of the building ended up getting was put at about a 19 foot from the front yard setback, which was supposed to be 20 feet. It was slightly under a foot off. Then in 1979, they did appeal to the zoning board, and for the main structure of the house, they were granted an okay to that it could, due to the expense of moving the foundation and the entire structure, that it would be prohibitive to have them move it. So the main structure was okayed at that point, 19 foot. Subsequent to this, there were some decking. There was a porch, a front porch with a roof overhang, and the second story wood deck that was put out there. Back in 1995, there was a permit for this decking work to be done. However, the original covered porch had never gotten an approval. And there was another ZBA determination back in 1980 and subsequent to this 1979 okay of the main building that clearly denied the front porch part of it. Somehow, though, in the property cards and as time passed, the subsequent permits got approved, and the plans and permits for the front porch with the roof overhang and the second story wood deck were listed on the C of O, and the plans that were associated with the C of O for permits from 1995. And so the covered porch was not approved but got on the C of Os. That was rectified in the front porch was not rectified. A 1-foot variance was too close to the front yard. It's not called out on the permit, but it was on the plans that were shown for that particular permit. Subsequent, the ownership of the home changed a couple of times, and Terrence O'Connor bought the home around 2013. So the latest permit that was put out for this property was back at 5/21/21. And as the project went on, the second story wood deck was moved slightly closer toward the front property line to line it up with the main building. So that, of course, was, put at 19 feet. And then additionally, there was a pergola put over that deck, over the covered wood deck, which was expanded to go beyond the original, the size of the covered deck as it existed in 1995. So neither of these were approved, and the applicant's coming to us now to make that, to legalize that. There's a long list of, long list on the property card, but ultimately there were a couple of COs that were granted, including the wood decking, even though the plan, it did show that the plans that of what's out there now, today, presently, were on the latest permit from 5/21/21. Permit number somewhere, 71143, I believe it was. And so it's kind of a dilemma. The property is also close to maxing out. But I think as it was stated in the TAM, that it's very possible this homeowner did not know about this whole history and was not aware that this was not approved. So I am looking to approve this project as it stands with a couple of conditions. They're on the survey. Well, it's not on the survey. On this property, there was a deck, not a deck, it was a patio area in the back corner of the property with a fire pit. It's not on the survey, and we don't know if that is legally permitted. But I think, going back, even though over this long history, and in 1979, there was a long narrative in the denial of the decking and the covered wood deck. But even in that narrative, there were people, testifying that they said things and somebody else that they didn't say things. So I think over all this time, I think the best thing is to approve this as it is today. If they're getting close to maxing out on coverage, building total lot coverage. And when I look back at the standards, the benefit, looking at the character of the neighborhood and the benefit to this applicant with this problem, I feel does outweigh any detriment to the town. We saw in the photos that this area of Madison Drive and Arthur, Grant Drive and Arthur Drive, this immediate neighborhood, as we saw in the photos, has changed somewhat over time. It's no longer all the small houses, kind of a mix of homes. But in this immediate area, the houses that are being built are similar to this one. And I think there, as far as alternative locations, there really are none for a front porch covered wood deck. There'd be, other than in the front, there may have been some options for the second story deck, but initially at 1995, it did have some approvals. It's just that they extended out in this last project to meet up with the house and beyond that, the pergola. So I can't even call this a self-created hardship in this case. But, so I am looking to approve it. I don't know if we could put restrictions or condition that we can condition that the survey be updated and whatever needs to be done regarding the patio area in the back and the fire pit, that it is, if it needs to be permitted, that they get it legally, make it legal if it's not legal today. And there were several neighbors and drawings that were sent in. It looked like the neighbors to the east and the west and the south were all in approving of this project.
Thank you. Good?
Yeah.
All right. Denise, you want to try?
I agree with Member Berger. Tyler Borsak during the public hearing clarified for us that there was an existing covered porch in front of the house dating back to the mid-90s. The original residence was moved and placed in a wrong location, and they did get a variance to keep it there. And in the 90s, they got the building permit to construct that covered deck in front, which was in error, but over years and years, they had, the COs were issued. And in the most recent building permit, as part of that, they expanded it slightly and added the pergola on the west side. So the only new structure constructed is the pergola and expansion of the first-story deck under the pergola. I do think that the property owner was probably not aware because of always getting issued COs and these structures being included. One of the things member Johan brought up during the meeting, which I listened to, was he referenced the fact that the pergola and the expansion of the deck, as indicated on the plans, was built exactly that way. So they didn't go beyond the scope of what the plans indicate. So really, for these reasons, I approve this application. The pergola and porch expansion were built in accordance with the 8/12/2021 drawings, and I am in favor of granting this application. I do think and it will not change the character of the neighborhood. That was very big too. And I think it is in compliance with 255-1110 of the town code, and for these reasons, I'm approving the application.
Thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I'm largely in agreement with my fellow board members. There are a couple of points with this one. This was kind of a mess because we're looking at a house that we obviously would not, under any circumstance, approve it being placed there, nor would we have ever approved, this board, I'm guessing, I can't speak for everyone, would be approving a porch that makes it even closer to the front yard. While it might not change the character of the neighborhood, it certainly is not a good example in the neighborhood for what can be done. That's all reasons why we'd want them to not see this move forward. I think that the idea that that the owner was aware or unaware doesn't really enter into my logic one way or another. What does enter into it, though, is the 5/21/21 building permit. And if the building permit is issued to an individual for whatever reason, incorrectly, perhaps because people missed something, all these things were suggested at the hearing, it's fine. Either way, what happens is if I'm the owner of that permit, I've just been given approval by the town to build what was on that drawing. Given approval to build what's on the drawing, I move forward and build it. It's hard for me to justify retroactively coming back and then saying, and by the way, there are a number of building codes here and a number of codes that we would want to see enforced. We don't like it. We don't like what it means in the neighborhood, and we don't think it sets a good example. I believe all of that. I think it's a very big ask to ask for a 9.1 side, 9.3 rather, foot variance. But I don't know how we get away from the fact that the building permit did have drawings associated with it that clearly showed what they had done. Had he built another foot out, I think we'd have something else to say, but it looks as if what was drawn, what's on the site is what was on the drawing. So although I think this is messy from the point of view of what we're allowing, I don't think we have a choice. And I think that from my point of view, I'm going to approve this application.
Thank you. I reluctantly also agree. This is a mess. There are two things that are problematic for me here, and one is that if this application was to come before us with squaring off with that pergola, I believe it would have been denied just based on the basis of the previous board's denial, right? The second thing that bothers me is that in Architecture 101, an architect knows that he has to design within setbacks. That zoning 101, is side yard setbacks, heights, pyramids. And so an architect actually drew these drawings and filed them And I think he should have known what those setbacks is. That's problematic for me. What we have in front of us is that's exactly what got submitted, and that's what the building department issued a building permit on. So, unfortunately, I agree, this is a problematic application, but I feel I would say we would have to approve this as well.
Yeah, there were a number of disturbing things. The fact
Yeah.
that it got on the C of O and the plans and
Yes.
Now,
and in 19, that this thing that disturbed me about the determination going way back when they did deny, like I said, was a lot of conversation back and forth in the determination saying so-and-so said that, and then that so-and-so would say, no, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
So
And
there
also,
was confusion
I
through
think
the whole
member-
time.
remember Johan's comment about the pergola and the expansion of the deck is relevant because if they did build something larger than what was on that
Yeah.
plan, we could have a whole different
Just like they
discussion.
did in the
Yeah.
past.
Right. But because they built it exactly to what was depicted on the plans, you're sort of saying, well, they didn't go beyond the scope of those building plans.
Along with our approval, I think we can approve that survey, but I think we should condition it on a
Oh, I
updated
want an
survey.
updated survey with that
To-
other
to-
area,
to-
with the
to-
fire pit and
the patio
yeah.
area.
yes, definitely.
Okay.
And that it be made legal if it's not legal. It
Yeah, so
needs
do you
to be.
want that
Are you good?
survey
No,
to
I'm good.
be
Okay.
submitted prior to the issuance of a building permit?
Say that again?
Do you want the updated survey demonstrating the fire pit and the patio? Do you want them to?
Well, I think
Aren't
they're
they
trying to
trying
close
to
this
get a
out. They're
CO?
closing
I
this
think
out
They
as a
want
C
to
of O.
close
I
out
see,
this.
sorry.
So I think it should
Yeah, they
be,
need
I
it.
think it should be
Right.
conditioned
C of O.
on a C of
Okay,
O.
very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because there would be
That's what they're
another,
trying to get.
wouldn't there be a final inspection that
Yes.
would point
Well,
out
not
if that
necessarily,
area
not
needs?
necessarily. I think,
something
yeah. I think, unless there's a requirement that the survey has to be submitted within a certain time frame of the C of O. But I think it's just prudent for us to require a.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
I think
yeah,
so,
I'd like
too.
to see it, yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
and that it's legal.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't think they get the CO if it's not legal.
Well, okay, that was my concern.
Giving out permits.
This is a good one.
Let's see.
So next we have applicant is Jessica Wayman at 1 Squires Path in East Hampton, Suffolk tax map number 300-157-3-16. The size and location is 26,729 square feet at 1 Squires Path, East Hampton. Description is to allow an accessory structure greater than 200 square feet to contain a bathroom. The relief sought is one variance of 334.5 square feet from 255-1123B of the town code is required to allow the existing 534.5 square foot accessory building to remain with a bathroom where 200 square foot is the maximum allowable. The zoning district is B residence, zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And this was in my area, so I'll kick this off. So the applicant on 1 Squires Path had a house that was approved with a garage and a studio back in, let's grab my notes here. And the most recent C of O is 1989. I'll just read from the TAM. The most recent certificate of occupancy was issued on the property in 1989 for a 252 square foot first floor, 252 second two-story addition and two-family residence having one kitchen only. And there was a prior approval in 1987 where they approved the garage and the studio. At that time, the studio did not have a bathroom. The applicants testified that somewhere between 2017 and when the owner bought the house, that the bathroom was added. It's unclear whether or not it was, for me, it was unclear whether or not the bathroom was added prior to the owner purchasing the property or after the owner purchased the property. And I'll tell you why, because we had testimony from a neighbor who was in opposition of the application and can testify that there was a lot of construction going on at that time. So it's unclear whether or not that when that bathroom was added. So the variance of 334.5 square foot is because of the bathroom was added and now has classified the entire accessory structure to be a pool house. There was a question on the survey of 39217. There was a shed on there that has been removed. And we had discussion whether or not if this application did get approved, get an updated survey. I'm sorry too. The history of the study goes back to 1967. I know about that. But if you take a look at the code that is referenced here, it's 255-1123B, and I'll just read it for you. It says, no accessory building other than a pool house of less than 200 square feet in gross floor area or artist studio, an artist studio or an affordable accessory apartment, meeting the requirements of this chapter, shall contain any bath, shower, or plumbing facilities. An accessory dwelling unit permit pursuant to 255-760 shall not be restricted by this limitation. I'm also going to read 255-1123D, where it talks about no accessory building on any residential property other than an affordable accessory apartment permitted pursuant to 255-1163 shall be comprised of habitable or livable space. And I think this is the crux of this application because the number one, we have a pool house that exceeds the size limit now for an accessory building. We have a bathroom that's been added to the pool house. We have testimony from a neighbor that a kitchen was added. Now, I looked at her submission in detail. She submitted a lot of correspondence from Airbnb and VRBO. And in that, it was inconclusive whether or not they were advertising the house as livable space for the pool house. For me, they actually advertise it as a pool house with a wet bar. Now, a wet bar is not a kitchen. You have to have cooking facilities to be a kitchen. So it was inconclusive for me whether or not there's a full kitchen in there. Regardless, there was testimony and strong testimony that she did testify and witness that there were people staying there. I weigh that to the point, I think what's more predominant in this case is whether or not a pool house should be allowed to have a bathroom and exceed this. I think there's very few pool houses that have been approved, and I don't think that this particular application rises to that level of approval. I'm just going to quickly go through the variance discussion guide, variance standards to go through it. Does the benefit to the applicant from grant of the area variance outweigh any detriment which the grant of the variance will cause the general health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the town as a whole? And I say no. I think approval of this with the potential of it being a living space based on the size of it, it just would, if we approved it, would set a bad precedent in this town. Is the area variance to be granted the minimum variance necessary and adequate to alleviate the difficulty causing the applicant to request an area variance? And I say that is not the minimum variance. There's room on the property to fit a pool house. Has the applicant shown that the benefit accruing to him from the grant of the requested variance outweighs any harm which will be caused by the neighborhood or the town, and that the variance requested is a minimum variance needed to alleviate his difficulty while safeguarding the character of the neighborhood and the general welfare of the town? And I'll say that is a no. We have already we had a neighbor that was testified that it was being misused. It was a complaint. She even went as far as filing a complaint with code enforcement for that reason. Will the grant of the variance cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, or will it create a detriment to nearby properties? I think based on precedent, undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, yes. I don't think if you allow a pool house with livable space or a pool house oversized, it's not what the code intended. And the benefits sought by the applicant be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue? The answer is yes, there is ample room on the property for a pool house. Is the requested area variance substantial? Yes. Will the grant of the variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions? This is not an environmental issue. This is a variance, area variance issue, and I think this question doesn't apply, but it still would set a wrong precedent if it was approved. And is it self-created? Yes, it is self-created. So with that, I would be voting to deny the application. Let's go next.
I'll go next.
Great.
I wrote down all the same things. Changing the character of the neighborhood, the variance is substantial, it's self-created. Can it be achieved by another method? Yes, it can. I'm going to, as Chairman Deline did, I'm going to deny this application. I think, and I'm keeping it short because the whole point of the town code requirement that small structures less than 200 square feet be the minimum allowable for plumbing is to prevent accessory structures from becoming habitable space. We do have testimony from a neighbor that this is being rented as a cottage and a pool house, and disturbing her peace and tranquility. I think there are other methods to obtaining, what they want, but in this particular case, I have to deny the variance request. It is not in keeping with 255-11-23B of the town code.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who wants to go next? Ed?
I'll go next. I'm in agreement with my fellow board members. I thought that this was a particularly interesting case for us. It started out the way it's going to finish up, and that is a discussion of whether or not we would be willing to approve this very large area variance to allow the building to have this bathroom, and whether or not it fit into the guidelines that we have adhered to and other decisions that we've made about maintaining the 200 square foot maximum for a pool house. I think that part of it was obvious. At that stage, I did ask the owner's representative, or I maybe made the comment if it wasn't a question, that having a structure that size could easily be converted into additional use. And I know the response was, well, anything could happen in the future, but there's no guarantee it would. Immediately thereafter, Lisa Levitin came in, swore herself in, and gave us testimony that was extensive, had a number of points. I would agree with the chair that is sworn testimony in front of us. However, we have not been able to go out, and we're not in a position to corroborate whether or not there is a kitchen in there. She talked about a kitchen being installed. I do think the fact that, and again, this is a sworn testimony, that people have lived in there for the summer means it's a livable space, which is exactly what we would be guarding against, having a structure, having a bathroom added to it. So whether or not many of these other things that were brought up at the hearing are accurate, and no reason to believe they're not, but we don't have to have any more than knowing that right now, when we look at this particular structure with a bathroom in it, it has the potential to become housing, which is exactly as was read in by both previous members here, and the chair read in very well all of the ways in which this is in violation of various codes and the ways in which we look at this, willing to look at this. I don't believe that this fits into any way to rising up to a level where we'd want to approve this variance. I think the idea that we have this large structure that can be used for housing and may in fact has been used for housing just reinforces our general feeling about what we're trying to protect when we rule in these cases. So I am also looking to deny it for many of the same reasons were mentioned by the chair and by member Savarese. I'm not willing to give approval to this at this time.
Thank you. Terry?
All right, I think, yes, well, the whole thing bothers me, this entire thing. We have a site planning and design for this in May 27th of 2021 that shows a study. It clearly, now they're couching this as a pool house. To ask for a variance of 334.5 square feet for this accessory building to remain with the bathroom where 200 is the maximum allowable is outrageous. Whatever it is, it's outrageous. It's way too much. And there was testimony by both the agent and Lisa Leviton that there are other places on this property if they want to put a pool house. The drawing bothers me because they show it's misleading. It's incredibly misleading. And if you look at I did also look at the documents that were turned in that night by Ms. Leviton. And, on those, even if you can't tell exactly that there's a stove or something like that, there's clearly another sink and a bar and much more than just a couch as was presented to us by the agent.
Or a bathroom.
Huh?
More than a bathroom.
More than a bathroom,
That's correct.
absolutely.
I would agree with that.
And clearly by the reviews and the rental, it's made into living space. So I am totally against this. I think this is a self-created hardship. It does seem to me that it was this owner that did it. Maybe we don't know 100% for sure, but I am very much denying this application.
I will say, in going back to the documentation that Lisa Leviton did give, that the advertisement in the VRBO did say a chic pool house with wet bar. So they were calling it a pool house, not a studio or not a garage or
It's an accessory building.
so they are advertising it as a chic pool house with wet bar.
Okay. But an accessory building over 200 feet can't have a
Right.
bathroom,
Yeah.
period.
Right.
Okay. You good? All right, counsel, you good on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
No confusion there.
We have in other decisions, Andrew Mintzer at 67 Leeton Road in Amagansett. Suffolk Tax Map number 300-131-3-16.1. It's a request to reopen the hearing for further discussion. You want to?
Sure. So we received a letter that was dated August 15th, 2022 from Dewey's Planning, which was the agent for this application, requesting that the board reopen the record so that they could make additional submissions that address certain issues that came up during work session, which the applicant's agent feels were not discussed during the public hearing. I made a follow-up call to the applicant's agent to find out what these additional submissions would be. Would they be changes, or are we talking arguments, in which case that's a separate procedure. She told me over the phone that it would be changes, things like a scenic easement or changes to the foundation. So with that information, I told her I would go to the board, and if there is a motion to reopen the record, it would need to be unanimous for additional submissions to come in. maximum of 45 days to make those additional submissions, and they would be subject to another public hearing. Your other option is to adopt the determination, which has already been circulated in draft. And then they could apply for a rehearing. Their other option, as they know and they acknowledged in the letter, is to withdraw the application, which they do not want to do because of timing. So that is what I'm presenting to you. You have the option to reopen and allow them to make some changes and then have another hearing. You can adopt the resolution, or rather the determination as written, and they can apply for a rehearing. That's it.
I'm gonna let
So you got this
I'm
yesterday.
gonna let member Denise go on this one. I have a,
We have a process.
Mhm.
And this is really going down a slippery slope because the board has rendered a determination. This is just my opinion. It's the first I'm hearing of this is right now. And I wouldn't be in favor of this.
I'm in agreement with that. I'm sorry, you got this on yesterday. Yesterday, they wait until we make a decision and now they want to make changes. I don't buy that there was something not discussed. I expect applicants to give us their best application.
Okay.
And I don't think, obviously it was their best application, was not, and not wait until we make a decision and now say, oh, we want to make some changes. I have a problem with that.
Okay.
I'm very much in agreement with Member Savarese. We have a procedure, and the procedure means that we have an open hearing, and then we have a period of time that we, as a board, consider our decision at a work session, and we then present our arguments one way or another. When we're done, we have a vote. When the vote is taken care of, we have filled our responsibility to follow this application to its natural conclusion. Now, if in fact, but any particular applicant doesn't like the result of that, I understand it, and they can reapply and bring a new application. They can figure out ways in which make it more attractive to the board. There's lots of things they can do, but the slippery slope comment by Member Savarese, I think, is exactly appropriate. I think we start opening these up after a decision's been rendered, and we're asking ourselves for lots of complications, possibly legal ones as well. So I am not in favor of opening it again.
I agree.
Okay, so no motion.
Yeah, no.
Very good. All right, so we'll go to the determination. Or rather the minutes, sorry.
The minutes. I will make a motion to draft the minute, to approve the draft minutes
gonna draft them
from
for later?
August 9th, 2022 for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Oh, I have to
You
second. I'll second.
Concur, baby?
I concur.
I concur.
I concur as well. Now we have resolutions, and we do have Andrew Mintzer at 67 Leeton Road in Amagansett, Suffolk tax map number 300-131-3-16.1. Council?
Yes, so this is the determination on the Mintzer application that we were just discussing. This was for first and second story additions, dormers, decking, extending the driveway and a new IA sanitary system, and to clear approximately 2,761 square feet of vegetation. An NRSP and 2 variances were required. This went to a vote before the 3-member board last week, and that was unanimously denied. And I asked the board to adopt this determination as written. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion for Andrew Mintzer at 67 Leeton Road in Amagansett, tax map 300-131-03-16.1 to approve the determination as written.
I second.
I concur.
I abstain.
Okay, we have a second determination that didn't make it onto the agenda, or rather a resolution, and that is in the Murphy settlement. I can walk it on now, but if you haven't had a opportunity to review that draft determination, which was circulated, I think, Thursday or Friday, actually. And the attachments there too, which includes the updated building plan to comply with the pyramid analysis. We can table it until next week.
I did not get a chance.
Okay.
I didn't.
That's fine. No, I
Hands
want,
Sorry.
I've spoken to Brian Matthews. I want you to make sure
I think
you're
we should
all in
be
on this
well-
because it does go into a so ordered stipulation of settlement. PS, the judge is very pleased with both sides' efforts to
I mean, I
resolve it.
glanced at it, but I didn't like zero in on it.
All right, fair enough.
The judges, please.
Judges, please.
Oh, that's good. Uh, Wasn't there another resolution?
No, that was me mistakenly thinking that we had a decision in Chapin's. That
Oh,
I
that was-
circulated
okay,
and then
okay.
wrote, wait a minute, no, wait, we still need,
okay.
we still need Roy's vote. So
All
that was my bad. I apologize. That was
Before-
me trying to do front load as much work as I possibly can before leaving and then realizing you're making decisions for the board. Sorry.
Before we make an adjournment, I was remiss in the beginning of this meeting to welcome back Member Joan McGivern.
Thank you.
Deja vu, Joan. We're going to call you Deja vu.
Okay.
So welcome back to the board.
you.
We're glad to have you here. Thank you.
All right. I have a motion to close out.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to close the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals hearing and work session for August 16th, 2022 at 8:16 PM.
Second.
I concur.
Concur.
I concur as well. Thank you.